We're very fortunate this afternoon. We've got Cindy Fisher with us. She has a Master of Arts degree in clinical psychology and is a registered clinical counselor with over 30 years of counseling experience. And during the last 17 years, in addition to a general private practice, her focus has been to help people reclaim their lives from chronic pain or chronic illness. And then over the last number of years, it has included an emphasis on teaching this mindfulness-based approach that she's going to share with us. She also has 4 CDs to help with learning to relax, managing pain, and improving sleep. So please join with me in welcoming Cindy.
How many of you have ever found yourself saying something like, "What was your name again?" Or driving down the street, you're driven down a lot and going, "Is that a new house? I've never seen that one before." Or how did it get to be February 20th? Wasn't it just Christmas last week? Any of you familiar with that kind of thinking language? Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to learn about how to do a little bit less of that. Sound good? Yes. Excellent. And the way we're going to do that is by doing this. We're going to first talk about the history of mindfulness, just a little bit to lay the framework. And then I'm going to define mindfulness so that we're all talking about the same thing and we know what we're talking about. And from there, we are going to take a look at why do we even want to be mindful? What are the benefits of mindfulness? And then we're going to look at how we can be mindful in everyday life and finish that off with a call to action. So as I'm talking over the next 45 minutes, what I'd like you to do is keep in the back of your mind, keep your back of your mind open to something that you hear today that you think, oh, now that's something I'd like to give a try, and I'm going to take that into my next week. So just keep your mind open to something that might tweak you a little bit about that you could take forward into your day, into your week. So the concept of mindfulness has been around for 2,500 years. It's not a new concept. However, it wasn't brought into the mainstream until around 1979 when a fellow by the name of John Kabat-Zinn developed a course called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. It was an 8-week course that he ran out of University of Massachusetts, the medical center there. It was 2.5 hours a week over 8 weeks, and people also practiced mindfulness between the sessions. And the evidence was so strong that this was benefiting people that it prompted research to be done. And since then, the mindfulness is considered to have a very strong basis in research and science. The reason I want to bring that up is because the ideas of mindfulness and meditation are sometimes seen as something just Buddhists do, or something that's hokey or new age, or, oh, I know people who do that, but that's not for me. So one of the things that I hope you will get out of the next 43 minutes is the idea that this is available to everybody. It's not a hokey new age kind of thing. You're probably already doing it, not even realizing you're doing it, and it might be just a matter of doing a little bit more of it. And hopefully by learning a little bit about the benefits of it, it'll convince you to do that. I'm doing a sales pitch. I'm not actually even a salesperson. Okay. So one of the studies that I want to share with you is about a fellow, do you know Anderson Cooper? Anybody familiar with that name? He's a CNN reporter or news person, journalist, I guess. He was interested in all of this. He was living a very busy life, and he heard about this mindfulness, this meditation, and he thought to himself, what is all of this about? So he volunteered for an experiment. And in this experiment, he was first taught some mindfulness meditation skills, and then a gel cap was put on his head with 128 electrodes. And what the electrodes were designed to do is pick up the activity in the posterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain. Then what he was asked to do was think of something really stressful. And what happened is that the electrodes started firing, they rapid fired, and there's a lot of activity in that part of the brain. Then he was asked to do the meditation that he had learned how to do, and that part of the brain calmed down. And then he thought about something stressful, rapid fired, and then he went back to the meditation and it calmed down. This is very convincing for him because he was living a very stressful life and he needed something to help with the stress that he was experiencing. And I believe following this that he took a longer course, and to my knowledge, he still practices mindful meditation to this day because he was just very convinced about it. Some of the research that came from John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction showed that there were changes in gray matter concentration. Now, that's good. We want increases in that, particularly in brain regions involved in learning, memory processing, and regulating emotions. And we want that, right? We want improvements in all those areas. So that's what mindfulness has to offer. And the nice thing is we can all learn to do this. So, and then thanks to a concept called neuroplasticity. Anyone familiar with that word, neuroplasticity, right? That's the ability for the brain to still grow, and we can still learn, and we can still keep learning until our dying day, basically. We used to think that the brain would build and grow until about 25 and then deteriorate from then, but thankfully that's not the case. Dr. Sarah McKay teaches about neuroplasticity, and she refers to it as the ability of the adult brain to generate and integrate new brain cells or neurons and remodel pre-existing neural circuits. All mental activity, sight, sounds, thoughts, and feelings are based on the brain's neural activity. Your mind and mental states become your brain. As my friend Dr. Rick Hansen says, day after day, your mind is building your brain. Then she talks later about self-directed neuroplasticity, and that occurs when we harness the power of focused attention to change our mind and change our brain in ways that are healthy and beneficial. And that's what we're going to be learning today in the next 39 minutes, is that mindfulness helps us with the power of focused attention. So it's one of the things that actually help us to grow our brain. Okay, so let's move on to talking about what is mindfulness. I'm going to break that down into the definition down into 3 sections. So the first section talks about mindfulness being about being in the present moment. When I say that to people, they often say, well, where else do you think I am? I'm not in the past, I'm not in the future, I'm in the present moment. But for the purpose of mindfulness, the definition of that is a bit more involved. What it means is bringing all your awareness into the present moment. So you might be here in this present moment, but you might be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner. Or you might be thinking about, maybe the food at lunch was too spicy and you're not feeling too good. Or you might be thinking about something completely nothing to do with this room in this moment. So part of you is in the moment, a part of you isn't. So what mindfulness teaches is how to bring all of your awareness into the moment. We have a natural tendency to avoid the moment because that's where discomfort is, that's where sadness is, that's where grief is, that's where physical pain is, that's where difficult emotions and thoughts and worries and everything feel like they're in this moment. So our tendency is to try and not be in the moment. And so what the mindfulness again teaches us is ways of being in the moment and staying in the moment that feel possible and that feel safe and that we're able to do. And you'll figure that out as I go along. So let's work just with thoughts and the breath for now. So how do we do this? How many of you would say you have what I would call a monkey mind? Right? I don't have to tell you what it is, and you already know what it is. Right? Thoughts jumping all over the place, emotions jumping all over the place. And that's one of the challenges of mindfulness, is to figure that out. So one of the ways that we do that in mindfulness is you become an observer. So you can do 2 things with your thoughts. You can either think them or you can observe them. So this is me thinking a thought. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? Darn, I forgot to defrost the chicken. Oh, should I go to the grocery store on the way home, or should I just defrost it when I get home? Right? That's me thinking. This is me observing. What am I going to have for dinner? Oh, wait a second, I'm having a thought. It's about dinner. Okay, so what was I doing? I was breathing. I forgot to defrost the chicken. You know what? That's a worry. That's okay. I had to focus on my breathing again. So now I'm not thinking the thought, I'm not getting hooked into the thought, I'm not getting hooked into the emotion. I'm just observing that, oh, I just had another thought. Interesting. Oh, an emotion. Oh, a physical sensation. Oh, my body just moved in a funny way. I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. I observe that. I become aware of it. So you can label your thoughts in two ways, lots of ways probably, but two that we're going to use today. One is by the content of your thought. I'm thinking about the argument this morning. I'm thinking about dinner. I'm thinking about lunch. Or it could be labeling your thought in terms of style. I have a worry. I'm judging. I'm planning. So those are sort of two ways of just planting those ideas in your head for you. John Kabat-Zinn, in his book, Letting Everything Become Your Teacher, 100 Lessons in Mindfulness, in chapter 64, he says, mindfulness does not involve pushing thoughts away or walling yourself off from them to quiet your mind. We are not trying to stop our thoughts as they cascade through the mind. We are simply making room for them, observing them as thoughts, and letting them be, using the breath as our anchor or home base for observing, for reminding us to stay focused and calm. So we're going to do a little exercise here. And what I want you to do is just start with feeling your bum in the chair, feeling your back against the chair, feeling your legs on the chair, feeling your feet on the floor, just noticing where your hands are, and just paying attention to your breath. You're not changing anything about your breath, you're just noticing it. Are you breathing in and out through your nose or your mouth? What part of your body moves when you breathe? Is it deep or shallow, fast or slow? Doesn't really matter, you're just noticing it, just observing it. And if a thought comes in, practice just noticing the thought, just being aware of it and go, I just had a thought. And then return to your breathing. Whether it's a worry, whether it's planning, whether it's about George or Mildred. Just breathing, returning to your breathing. And if you get hooked in the thought and you have a hard time getting out of it, then just say, oh, I'm hooked in the thought. Okay? And then see if you can return to your breathing. And then just notice your bottom in the chair again. Maybe turn to the person beside you and smile. And then bring your attention, if you close your eyes, just gently open them. And just bring your attention back to me, front of the room. So what are you aware of right now? Becoming an observer of your thoughts, feelings, breath, body sensation, pain, body movements. So the next part of the definition, being in the present moment on purpose. That's pretty important. There's a story of a man and a horse. So this man's walking down a country lane, and he hears behind him a galloping horse. He can tell the horse is going really fast. So he turns around and he sees a man on a horse galloping at breakneck speed. And just as the man and the horse pass him by, he turns to the man and says, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" And the man turns to him and says, "I don't know, ask the horse." Apparently, according to Jack Canfield and the Success Principles, 90% of our behavior is habitual. We don't know where we're going. The horse knows. We don't know. 90%. I mean, and that's good in a way, because you don't have to think about, as I'm, moving, I have to move, engage these muscles, move my hand over, lower my thumb, press the button. I mean, I just know how to do it. I don't have to think about it. So it's actually really, really good that a lot of our behavior is habitual. However, it also means that we're not always consciously aware of the things that we really should be consciously aware of. And we'll look at that as we go along. Research out of Harvard shows that 47% of the time our minds are lost in thought. That's a lot, isn't it? Have you ever driven somewhere and not remembered how you got there? Don't admit that if that's the case. Or, like we said before, heard someone's name and forgot it 2 seconds later. The problem is, in autopilot or in that automatic mode, we're missing out on living our lives. So we want to do less of that. So let's do another very brief exercise. Again, I want you to just notice your bum in the chair. Notice your back against the chair. Notice your legs on the chair. Your feet on the floor. Notice where your hands are. Just notice your breath again. Not changing anything, just noticing it. And then just listen to the sounds around you. There might be a hum you hear, maybe something out in the hallway. So you're doing this on purpose. You're purposefully listening to the sounds around you. Maybe somebody beside you is rustling or moving. Maybe you can hear your own heartbeat. Maybe just my annoying voice not stopping. And again, if you find yourself wandering from purposefully listening to the sounds around you, just notice that. Just be aware of that. And bring yourself back to listening to the sounds. And then just return to feeling your bum on the chair. If you've closed your eyes, gently open them. Maybe turn to the person on the other side of you and smile to them. And bring your attention back to the front of the room. So we have now been in the present moment on purpose. And the third part is without judgment. That's a big one. We find we're pretty judgmental as people, pretty critical, pretty easy, especially towards ourselves, to be hard on ourselves. What mindfulness teaches us is to loosen that up a little bit, to learn to be more in the moment with ourselves exactly as it is. So did you judge yourself for not being in the moment in the last couple of exercises? Did you think you weren't doing it right, or you could have done it better, or maybe other people are figuring it out faster than you, or maybe you're disappointed in yourself for not having stayed in the moment more? Those are all judgments that take you out of the moment. What would you change? What would change if you noticed physical sensations and you just noticed them for what they were? Because it's not about right or wrong ways of being mindful or of anything. When you're being mindful, you're either being mindful or you are not. So when you suddenly get distracted by thoughts, you're not doing mindfulness wrong. You simply stop being mindful. And then you can choose whether you go back to being mindful or not. So even with mindfulness, there's nothing about good or bad, right or wrong. It's simply about developing the awareness that you've stopped being mindful and choosing to return to mindfulness or not. When it's not about right or wrong, good or bad. So it's not about sadness is bad, joy is good, negative thoughts are bad, I'm wrong when I do that, I'm right when I do that. When you're mindful, it's not about that. You no longer need to change the present moment, because no matter what's happening in the present moment, it just is as it is. And that's the non-judgment part. You don't have to change the moment if you don't judge the moment. So it allows you to accept the present moment just as it is. Basically, mindfulness, you notice what's already happening. We don't have to escape the moment because it's okay. Whatever's happening is okay. It has to be, because this moment has already happened. You can't change it because it's already happened. So you're only harming yourself when you need it to be different. That makes sense? It is as it is. So summary, mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment to moment. Jon Kabat-Zinn. Sometimes it helps to, when you define something, to look at the opposite of what we're talking about. So we're just very briefly going to do that, look at what mindfulness is not. So what is not mindfulness? Things like mindlessness, fail to notice physical pain or discomfort. If you think about it, if you don't notice pain or discomfort, then you may not make the right choices in terms of how to do the next activity that you're going to do. forget a name as soon as you hear it, listen while doing something else, get lost in your thoughts or feelings, eat without being aware of eating, drive somewhere and wonder, how did I get here? Worry about the future, dwell on the past, or distraction with alcohol, drugs, work, food, gambling, gaming. Okay. So why practice mindfulness? Because life happens in the moment. That's the biggest reason. But let's take a second at what research tells us about that. So what the research shows is that it enhances the immune system. So there was a study done with 48 biotech workers where they were given the flu virus, and then half of them did the mindfulness-based stress reduction, the 8-week course, and the other group didn't. And what they found was a group that did the mindfulness-based stress reduction had significant higher levels of antibodies than the group that didn't, as well as higher levels of antibodies than they had before the group, so their antibody levels increased. Meditation stimulates the immune system brain function regions. Mindfulness meditation has shown increases in electrical activity in the prefrontal cortex, the right anterior insula, and right hippocampus, all parts that control positive emotions, awareness, and anxiety. These are also the areas of the brain that act as a command center for your immune system. When stimulated, they make the immune system function more effectively. Next, we have mindfulness decreasing pain. In an article by a fellow named Ziden, in a study actually by a fellow named Ziden, he did an experiment where he put a pain-inducing heat device on participants' legs, and at a temperature that would be uncomfortable for anyone, a bit painful for anyone. And the scans that were taken after meditation training of these people that had this on their leg showed that every participant's pain ratings were reduced, with decreases ranging from 11 to 93%. At the same time, meditation significantly reduced brain activity in the area that's crucially involved in creating the feeling of where and how intense a painful stimulus is. The research also showed that meditation increased brain activity in areas that stores its experience of pain and comes up with coping mechanisms. Meditation produces a greater reduction in pain than even morphine or other pain-relieving drugs, which typically reduce pain ratings by about 25%. One of the areas of work that I do in my practice is pain management. I help people who deal with the psychological recovery from pain and illness. And that's one of the reasons I incorporate this area into my work with people, because it is so effective for pain, but also for the suffering that goes along with pain. It also improves sleep. I could tell you lots of studies about that, but I just want to share a personal story about that. I used to sleep very poorly for a few years, and then I started doing, on the encouragement of a friend, I started to do the mindfulness meditation. And within about 3 weeks, I started to sleep a little bit better. I woke up a little less often, and I was able to fall back to sleep a bit more easily when I did wake up. And after about 6 to 8 weeks, my sleep had improved a lot. And then I found, it was just last fall, I was moving and we traveled a bit and there was a whole bunch of stuff happening, and I'd just fallen off the wagon in terms of doing my daily meditation. And all I was doing was 10 to 15 minutes before bedtime. That was it, not a huge commitment. But I'd just fallen off the wagon doing it, and my sleep started to deteriorate, and I thought, is this because of stress? Like, what's happening here? And it took about a month for me to put together the fact that I had stopped doing my meditation. And as soon as I started, probably within even 3 or 4 days, because I had a practice effect going and I could pick up on it quite quickly, my sleep improved again. So for me, it's night and day how well it works. Just kidding, that was a bad joke. It also reduces anxiety and depression. I understand from researching a little bit on Parkinson's that 50 to 60% of people with Parkinson's or more even struggle with depression and anxiety. And there are a lot of things you can do, so I want to bring this, I know exercise, diet, all those things are talked about. Mindfulness meditation is another thing that can help. There's a book here that I'm going to read a little bit from. It's called The Mindfulness Solution by Ronald D. Siegel. And in chapter 6, he talks about mindfulness of emotion. He says, mindfulness practice helps keep us from getting stuck in depression. While this can happen during an intensive retreat, meaning a meditation retreat, it can also occur in daily meditation or through informal mindfulness practice. We come alive by attending to feelings right now, by attending to what is happening at the moment, rather than speculating as to why it is happening. And a few pages later, and before I read that, I want to just ask you all a question again. How many of you notice that when you feel, let's say, anxious, that you have thoughts that are worries, fears, what ifs about the future, right? You have a certain style of thinking that goes with when you feel anxious. And when you feel joyful, you probably have more positive thoughts and more hopeful thoughts and more self-supportive thoughts, right? They're different quality of thoughts that you have with that. So this is what he's talking about here. So he says our moods can change like the weather, and with each change comes a different set of thoughts. When we're in a particular mood, we tend to believe the thoughts that accompany it. So when we try to argue with ourselves and see the other side of things, it's very difficult to believe in a point of view that doesn't match our mood. When people are depressed, they think, oh yeah, I used to think I was all right, but now I realize I was just fooling myself. So then he goes on to talk about the mindfulness alternative, and he says, instead of arguing with the negative thoughts, we work to see them as passing phenomena, dark clouds passing through the sky. This is at the heart of a treatment system developed in Canada by Zindel Siegel and in Great Britain by Mark Williams and John Teasdale called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which has proven to be remarkably effective at helping people avoid relapsing into serious depressive episodes. The approach teaches people mindfulness practices with a particular emphasis on not taking any thoughts too seriously, but rather staying grounded in sensual reality here and now. Lots of books out there on this kind of stuff as well. Moving right along. This research also supports that mindfulness helps with improving focus and concentration. In her book, How to Train a Wild Elephant, Jan Chosen-Bay says, when we're doing mindful meditation, we are training the mind to be light, powerful, and flexible, but also to concentrate on what we ask it to focus on. Right, so that's what some of her studies have shown. And speaking of flexible, that's one of the tenets of mental health. You know, the more rigid our thinking is, the less mental health we have. The more flexible our thinking is, the more mental health we have. And that's one of the things that we gain from mindful meditation is the ability for our mind to be flexible. Just look at the way that the journalist earlier on was able to flip back and forth between being stressed and not being stressed. That's flexible. And it also helps us to be calmer. I was just talking about this a second ago, calmer and less emotionally reactive to stress. This is an absolute must. Something like 80% of what we go to doctors for is stress related. And so and everything seems to get worse with stress as well, whether it's a skin condition or allergies, or even the movements we make become less fluid, even without Parkinson's. And so it's something that the better stress management you have, the more quality of life you have. Similar to other studies, studies show that people who practice mindfulness manage stress more effectively. A lot of research out there supporting that. Just before we go on to the next section, I just want to read one more little blurb. Some of you might have seen this article on the internet. It's called Mindfulness Works for Parkinson's Patients, and it's written by a couple of physiotherapists, Terry Gebhardt and Tim Flynn. They talk about one person here. He says, a longtime practitioner of mindfulness for 10 years, Rob Piper, a Fort Collins resident, was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2014. He describes mindfulness in his life to be living in the present moment and not dwelling in the past or future. Mindfulness has helped him acknowledge his thoughts and emotions by being more present and responding to them rather than reacting to them. Sometimes he feels anxious regarding the future of his Parkinson's, but he is able to use mindfulness training to calm his anxieties and have more control of his mind and body. He describes how breathing is a natural tranquilizer that makes him feel more focused during the day, improves his sleep at night, and makes him more consciously aware of his physical movements. All right, and then how do we be mindful? So we're going to cover two ways of doing that. One is in a more formal way, which is making time every day for mindfulness. And the other is an informal way, which is not about squeezing more time in your day, but finding ways to incorporate it into your day. So first, formal practice. That involves a regular practice of meditation, relaxation, breathing, whatever your style is, whatever your preference is. You're actually stopping your day to make focused time to meditate. Life can sometimes feel like a speeding train going by. And what you're doing when you're doing a formal practice is you're getting off the train, getting on the platform for a while, watching a few trains go by while you do your meditation, mindfulness. And then you get back on the train. Now you're kind of on a slower train because you don't feel as rushed in life. Now you've gotten on the milk train instead of the bullet. Research supports that positive benefits come from meditating even just 10 to 15 minutes, 1 to 2 times per day. Not a huge time commitment. Like I say, for myself, it was 10 or 15 minutes at night, and I saw huge benefits. Benefits are most notable after 6 to 8 weeks of practice. I definitely noticed for myself that was around the window when I saw the biggest benefit, and that also is supported by the course that John Kabat-Zinn developed, which is an 8-week course. So through awareness, you learn to become an observer of the breath, thoughts, feelings, pain, body sensations, and even body movements. So let's take one more time to practice being. So just again, notice your buttocks on the chair and your back against the chair and your thighs on the chair, your feet on the floor. Notice where your hands are. Just pay attention to your breathing. We're not changing anything. We're not judging our breathing to be right or wrong. It is as it is, so just let the breathing be what it is. On the next out breath, I want you to just notice your shoulders. And on the next out breath, notice your abdomen. And on the next out breath, notice your face. And on the next out breath, notice your hands. And on the next out breath, notice your legs. And if you notice that your mind goes somewhere else, just be aware of it. Don't judge it. Just bring it back to being aware of your shoulders and abdomen. And face. And hands. And legs. And if you notice physical discomfort or movements that you notice, just be with them. Just let them be what they are. Don't judge them. Don't even label them as being Parkinson's or being this or that or whatever. They just are what they are. They're there or they're not there. Not judging them, not getting emotionally hooked into them, not getting reactive to them. Just letting them be what they are. And breathing in again on the next out breath, noticing all these areas one after the other. Shoulders, abdomen, face, hands, legs. Then on the next out breath, noticing your entire body all at one time. Your whole body. Front and back, left and right, inside and out. Whole body at one time. And do that for the next couple of breaths. Remembering to just notice what there is to notice. And then just bring your awareness back to your seat on the chair. If you've closed your eyes, gently open them. Turn to somebody in the room and smile at them. No, everybody smile at me. That's great. How many of you, compared to 2 minutes ago when I started that, how many of you feel more relaxed? How many of you feel more in the moment? Okay, interesting. 2 minutes. Imagine what 5 or 10 minutes would do. Okay, so that's the formal. So what you've just done is a formal mindful meditation. That's it. An example of one. So let's now talk about informal ways of being mindful. So informally, what you're doing is you're letting mindfulness spill into every aspect of your waking life. We don't start with every aspect. So think of it like a paint by number. Anyone done paint by number a few years ago? You know, when you start with the first color, you peel it back, you stir it, and then you paint all the number ones, and then you go number 2. That's how you want to integrate mindfulness into this type of mindfulness, the informal kind, into your life. Is you pick one area of your life to work on, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, until it becomes part of that 90% of that automatic or that habitual, where you're so used to doing something mindfully that now it's just the way you do it. And then you bring the next into your life. So that way you don't overwhelm yourself, you don't create failure. You just keep working at it without judging yourself until you feel that it's well integrated, and then work on the next area. So let's take a look at some examples of what that might look like. So one example is to take an abdominal breath each time you do something that you do regularly, whether it's hanging up the phone, checking your email, stopping at a red light, getting up out of a chair, whatever you do on a regular basis. You just connect a breath to anything you do regularly in your day, kind of like hitting a reset button. One of the things that happens with abdominal breathing is we affect what's called our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve runs from our brainstem down through our throat, around the lungs, and connects to all the organs. And the vagus nerve is directly linked to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is called our rest and digest part of our nervous system. It's the opposite of our fight or flight. Everyone know about the fight or flight response, right? Where you get scared or PTSD, all that kind of stuff, right? That's the sympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic side is the side that we want to stimulate. That's our calm side. And just by breathing and feeling your rib cage expand or feel your abdomen expand, you're stimulating that vagus nerve, which means you're stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So just breathing alone already starts to trigger the relaxation response. So imagine if you just breathe through the day and you just started breathing better, and you did that regularly through the day, even just doing that kind of mindfulness is already going to help you. Find the space at the top or bottom of your breath and rest in it. That's kind of interesting. Have you noticed that when you breathe in, that something has to happen between breathing in and breathing out? And something has to happen between breathing out and breathing in. There's actually a space there if you look for it. And what you do is you make that space a little bit longer, and you just stop there. And you just notice what that's like to be between the in-breath and the out-breath, and between the out-breath and the in-breath. And that can be a really nice, mindful, meditative place. There's one type of breathing, it's called 4-square breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, and hold out for a count of 4. And that can be very meditative as well, because now you're keeping yourself busy too, because you have to count and you have to figure all of this out. So things like that make it a little bit easier to stay focused, as if you give yourself a little task while you're doing your mindful meditation. So just like there's a space at the top and bottom of your breath, if you think about it, there's also a space between our thoughts. There has to be a moment where you switch from one thought to the next thought. So if you're, let's say, lying in bed at night, none of the other techniques we worked about are working, and you're lying there and kind of going, great, mine's going a mile a minute, monkey mind's active, what do I do? This is another thing you can be doing, is rather than thinking your thoughts, you can just look for that space between the thoughts. Another way to do this is to take something like a poem or the Lord's Prayer or Serenity Prayer, and look for the space between the words. That's another way that you can apply that. So at night, this can be another way to occupy yourself so you're not actually caught in the thinking. Now you're just observing the thought again. Do a tension check. Take a few seconds. Here's an example. This is from a website, mindful.org, nice website. I have this as a little card stuck on my computer screen. Are you holding on tight anywhere? Your jaw, your neck, your eyes, your feet? Ease up and let loose. Our brain works with links and connections. So if you do this on a regular basis and you just scan your body, and you do that every time you look at a little piece of paper like this, what happens is each time you do it, you become a little bit more effective at getting to that relaxed place. Relaxation, mindfulness, meditation, they're all skills. And because they're skills, you get better with practice. So the more you do it, the better you get. So now I'm at the point where I look at that and I just feel my body go, again, that's how quick it can become, where it becomes a cue to your body to find that place that's relaxed and released. Again, thinking of resetting your body through the day. How else? Be conscious about the first few bites of your meal. Eating is a notorious place that we do unconsciously that we don't think about. I mean, how many of you have eaten a meal and kind of gone, look at your plate and surprised that it's empty? Or if I ask you, what did you have for dinner last night? I don't know, because I wasn't really paying attention. So the way this works is you start with just looking at your plate and grab your fork and decide what you're going to put on your fork, and then take a look at it and smell it and study it and put it in your mouth. Put your fork down, right? Because what do? We take the next bite and hovers in front of our mouth, waiting for our mouth to empty, if it even empties before we put the next bite in. So you're putting your fork down, and you just notice what it feels like for that food to be in your mouth. Then you start chewing, maybe chew a little longer than you normally do, see what happens when the saliva combines, what's happening to the taste buds. And then when you go to swallow, just noticing what you notice when you swallow. Is there anything you can actually feel as you swallow? And just wait and see how long there are sensations to that bite. And then pick up your fork and do the next bite. So that's how that might look with mindful eating. Again, if you use eating when you're stressed, you might have opened the cupboard door where the cookies or crackers are, or open the fridge and already be eating before you think about it. So if you make a habit of noticing, being awareness, right? Being aware of when you open the fridge or open the cupboard door, and then make a choice about whether you're going to take the next step or not, or step away from the fridge, then that can be an area that, if that's something that fits for you, that can be an area to start with the informal type of mindfulness. Something like feeling the water and soap on your body during a bath or shower. Be aware of your feet on the ground as you walk. Or as you walk, you might be noticing the smells and the sights and the sounds and the sensations as you walk. Just really notice what's around you. Vancouver Island's a great place to do that, isn't it? So the possibilities are really limitless. Your imagination, I guess, is the limit. So if you can see your path paid out in front of you, step by step, you know you're not on your path. Your own path you make with every step you take. That is why it's your path. Joseph Campbell. So now we come to your part, the call to action, which is how will you choose to be mindful in your life? So if you take something from what we talked about today, whether it's a formal, informal, whether it's just playing with your thoughts a little bit, whether it's adding the breath in, pick something. I challenge you to pick something to take into your day, into your week, just to start playing with a little bit. And hopefully I've sold you on the idea that mindfulness is for everybody, and that adding it to your life is only going to make your life better. And thank you very much.
Thank you for the lesson in meditation and mindfulness. I think you had a few of us getting very, very meditative there for a while. This afternoon you have a very relaxing voice too, so. We do have a few moments for people to ask any questions about how to apply this in terms of working through Parkinson's disease issues. Yes, ma'am. Come over there.
What is the difference between meditation and mindfulness? And meditation relaxation and meditation and being on autopilot.
Okay. Right. So I would say that meditation is a form. That's a good question. So meditation would be more the formal type of mindfulness. So meditation is where you actually take time in your day to stop your day and just spend time with your body, with your breathing, just to explore the moment. And mindfulness is that too. So you can have mindful meditation where you might do that, might have that style of mindfulness. But mindfulness also involves just what you might do in everyday life. So you might choose to live in a more mindful way by listening better to people and making a point of remembering people's names and eating a bit more slowly and just living on a more conscious level. So the autopilot is when we don't live very consciously, where we just kind of go through life like a bulldozer, just kind of not even really thinking too much about what we're doing because we're somewhere else, because our mind's in the past or future. Bringing mindfulness, we bring ourselves into the moment, and then we're not in autopilot when we're in the moment. We're actually in the moment. So that's mindfulness takes us out of autopilot. The meditation tends to be more formal, yeah. That's the way I distinguish it, is you actually take time to do this practice called meditation. And that can be as simple as just breathing, just focusing on breathing. So mindful meditation or meditation, I don't know that those two terms would be that different. But mindfulness itself, I think, is a bit broader.
Any other down here at the back? Good for me to wait.
What about using adult coloring books for your meditation time or something like that? It's become so much popular now. Yeah.
That's almost an example that you've got up on the screen right now. Are you familiar?
Yeah, right.
Are you familiar with those books?
Yeah.
They're basically very, very detailed coloring books that
Yeah.
you almost get into
Right.
that kind of meditative state when you're using them.
I hesitate because I think the drawback could be that you get caught in your mind when you do that, right? So if it's something that that you're very much in the moment, that's, I guess, one way of being in the moment. So if you're not, while you're doing that, so off into the past or future, into a fantasy world almost, but you're actually in the moment, I guess it could work. But the risk would be, are you actually, it's all your awareness in the moment or not? Because now you're doing something maybe you don't have to think a lot about. Yeah, that would be pretty meditative then, yeah.
So this is a bit of a follow-up to that.
So one more thing. So there's a difference between doing something relaxing and meditating, right? So that's why, there might be a difference there. So doing something relaxing like reading a book is not the same as relaxing or meditating, and not the same as practicing relaxation, having a relaxation practice or meditating. So where do you think that falls? Are you just doing something relaxing, or do you think you're practicing meditating?
Probably I'm just doing something relaxing.
Right. So, and that's great. But also maybe on top of that, I would probably still do a meditation or mindfulness. And doing relaxing things is great, but it's not quite the same as actually taking dedicated time to focus on relaxing and checking in with yourself. Does that make sense?
Okay. Could you go back to the Joseph Campbell quote?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Please. So your path is paid? Or is that a typo?
If you can see your path.
Because I didn't understand that.
Laid. I guess it's like similar to laid out, paid out in
Okay.
front of you, kind of like laid out in front of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We very much appreciate this. It's our first venture as a society into providing this kind of information as program material, although we have had, I suppose, resource material available for quite some time. So thank you very much for the walkthrough of the process.
Great.
Please join with me.